Pop quiz. Just kidding. Okay, so I'm going to send you a picture of this graph.
Okay.
And actually, it's a picture of the initial post. And you tell me what questions or thoughts come to mind when you see it.
Okay. Full disclosure, I've seen this before because I follow Aaron on Blue Sky, but I might have seen it. In any event, it came to me on Blue Sky, and I did not look very deeply in it because I was not having a good morning when I was scrolling Blue Sky, and I didn't want to make it any worse.
Relatable. Relatable.
So I would say this is almost first impressions. When I look at the graph, yeah, one of them just seems a lot spikier than the others.
Yes. All right. Good first call, right? Quick message before we start. We hope our conversations open up new perspectives and new ideas for our listeners, and our goal is to be informative. But we want to emphasize that this isn't a substitute for individual therapy, and we're not providing medical or psychological advice here. If you feel moved by what you hear, and if you want to explore it more deeply, or if there's something in your life you'd like to work on, please reach out to an LGBTQ affirming therapist online or in your area. You'll be glad you did.
Welcome to the Psych Out Podcast, where two psychology nerds get psyched up for LGBTQ affirming history, research, and practice. And now your hosts, Jen and Chris.
So about a week ago, I saw a great instance of bad science in the wild. And it was a wonderful way of addressing it as well. Aaron Reed from Aaron in the Morning sent out a Substack that talked about how a sort of right-wing representation of a particular survey was misleading and really breaking down why. And it was such a great example of exactly what we were talking about in that episode of Spotting Bad Science in the Wild that I really wanted to go through and sort of discuss a little bit of the points that she made. And then, there was an article in The Advocate that made a similar point, and just some of the things that I saw as well as a great example for people to maybe look at and in this current conversation be able to even practice, as it looks like this has become like viral misinformation. So a week ago, a right-wing, or maybe that's unfair, a very conservative professor of politics who's currently in Canada, who is known for his anti-LGBTQ views, as far as I understand it, was apparently on Twitter, or X, which I even tried to log back in order to read this, and I can't even log in. So that's how distant from X I have now become over the course of several years. But on X, he posted a claim that I want to read this word for word. The post was a graph, and it said, trans identification is in free fall among the young. And the graph said, share of students not identifying as male or female, 2016 to 2025. And it has 3 lines that it's charting from 3 different surveys: Andover, Fire, and Brown. I'm not sure I know much about Andover or Brown, but the analysis that I've seen has specifically focused on Fire. And there are all sorts of issues with this representation of the data. And if you're okay with it, Chris, I'm going to describe it in a little bit more detail, and then we're going to sort of see what you come up with and then what I have read as well. Is that okay with you?
Yeah, absolutely.
Pop quiz. Just kidding. Okay, so I'm going to send you a picture of this graph.
Okay.
And actually, it's a picture of the initial post. And you tell me what questions or thoughts come to mind when you see it.
Okay, full disclosure, I've seen this before because I follow Aaron on Blue Sky, but I might have seen it. in any event, it came to me on Blue Sky, and I did not look very deeply in it because I was not having a good morning when I was scrolling Blue Sky, and I didn't want to make it any worse.
Relatable.
So I would say this is almost first impressions. When I look at the graph, yeah, one of them just seems a lot spikier than the others.
Yes. All right. Good first call, right? So he's making a summary saying that like trans identification is in free fall, right? And if you look at the chart, like you've got three very different responses. If we were going to go from 2023 to 2025, one survey shows that students not identifying as male or female goes from about 9% to 2%. Another one shows it going from about 4.5% to 2.5%. What conclusion would you make from comparing three surveys with this kind of data in it and the data being that broadly different?
I'm wondering if all three of those surveys are using the same language. I mean, by dint of being different surveys, they almost certainly aren't using exactly the same language, but I'm wondering exactly how different this language is.
100%. And this is like a typical problem in demographics, especially about LGBTQ things and other things that have stigma attached to them, but just like in general. Depending on the question a survey asks, you'll get a different answer. And depending on the population and the sample that the survey uses, you'll get a different proportion, which is one of the reasons why if somebody asks me, what is the proportion of LGBTQ people in the country? I will say, your guess is as good as mine.
Yes, we do not know is the impression I have had. I have written papers like where one of my starting assumptions was it would be helpful to have that number, and I'm going to write this paper knowing that I do not know that number.
Yeah. People will default to saying it's 10%. And that is, I mean, I can see where they're getting that data, but it varies extremely wildly. So yeah, that's part of the problem is that demographic data on surveys is very unreliable. And it depends a lot on how they're asking the question. There is another thing that you could get out of this post, though, like compare the title of the chart or the graph with what he is saying.
Yes. Claim 1, trans identification is in free fall among the youth. Title of the graph, share of students not identifying as male or female.
Right.
So we are these are not the same thing.
Not at all.
These are not the same thing.
Not at all. And Aaron Reed pointed that out as well. And I believe it was Aaron who said, well, this is more charting non-binary identities than trans identities. But I would actually argue, no, like how many of us have gone through a demographic form and it said male, female, other, like many of us, right? And a lot of people will say other or just decline to answer the question because they don't want to answer demographic questions at all. Just like a lot of people won't put race down, right? A lot of white people won't put race down. So what I think this is doing is it's digging up the initial demographic. In fact, I know this for one of the surveys. It's digging up the initial like demographic data that is taken before the actual substance of the survey and making a conclusion based on how many people were willing to click male or female as opposed to other or skip it.
Right.
And then now he's a smart guy, right? He's a smart dude. Either he fundamentally misunderstands what transgender is.
Yeah.
Right. Or this is in bad faith. Right. This is propaganda.
Yeah. And I just think about the number of times that I have like on an intake been faced with, a small number of choices, none of which like accurately capture my identity. And my hope is always, okay, I'm going to put in, what feels like the closest. And then if it comes up, if it's even relevant in the conversations I'm going to have with whoever's form I'm filling out, I will then be able to clarify and provide more data.
Exactly.
And what you're
Exactly.
seeing is like, yeah, they threw out every other piece of data that they got after that initial sorting. At least in the
Yeah. And like, sorry, go on.
that's what we're theorizing is like they may have thrown out everything else they got, right?
If you're enjoying what you're hearing, don't forget to like and subscribe. That way you'll be notified when our next episode drops. You can also check out our Patreon for your very own Psych Out t-shirt. And now, back to the show.
Well, I mean, we can do more than that because I'm going to give you more.
Ooh.
But I will say, like, backing up to the fundamental misunderstanding, like many binary trans people would just say male or female.
100%.
And how they would define it in their own minds is different. But it is exactly the opposite demographic of people than what he is saying it is that this chart is showing. So I have seen some pushback to this that essentially is saying, well, of course there's less people identifying as that in this atmosphere. It's politically dangerous to identify as trans or gender expansive. And I want to validate that there's truth to the fact that it is more dangerous right now. I am not seeing evidence in these surveys at all that that is what is happening, right? What I'm seeing is surveys that are not being, I'm seeing data that is being shared manipulatively. So Erin digs in a little bit more to the data, and she is responding to, I think, a statistician who came in and did some of this work as well. Jacob Eliasson is a data scientist who Erin cites, and we'll give you the link to both of these in the description. And he went in and looked at the data itself. One of the main things that he points out is that the data that Kaufman is using is unweighted survey data. And I'm going to imagine that a lot of listeners here don't know what it means to weight your data. So this is what happens in every poll that you're going to get and in every research study that you're going to see. I guess I never like to say every, but pretty much all respected polls and research papers and all of that.
Right.
If they're doing surveys, they're going to make sure that they get a representative sample of the population they're surveying. And it's really important to look into that because there are groups of people who are less likely to respond to people like knock, knock, knock. Can I take information from you? Or ring, 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 or whatever. Can I take the survey with you? There are just people who are like kind of underrepresented, generally speaking. And also sometimes just randomly you end up with a different cohort, right? So like it just so happens that time you ended up seeing like way more people over 25 than people under 25, for instance, right? The data that Kaufman is taking is the unweighted raw data from these surveys. It is not actually the weighted data, which is the information that most people would report as the accurate data, right? So this data has not been evaluated at all for how representative the sample is, right, over time. When Eliasson went in and did crunch the numbers, weighting the numbers appropriately, the difference, my understanding is actually showed more people identifying as something other than male or female. I didn't dig into that part really well, but point being, like there was a big change when going in and looking at weighting the data, right? I don't think that means we should actually take the weighted data all that seriously either, and I'll explain why. But we did a little bit by talking about how frustrating and difficult it actually is to get demographic info. But also, at least the FIRE survey, and I don't know about the other two, wasn't about gender at all. It's it's the organization itself is called the Foundation for Individual Rights and Expression, right? Which
solid acronym.
You know, mad respect for the acronym game right there. I do like it. And their logo is pretty cool, pretty solid as well. I don't think I went to their website and my sense is that there is a lot of rightward leaning toward that. A lot of like conservatives are being silenced in the university sort of rhetoric. Although it also looks like they kind of are a little less like hypocritical than that. Like it looks like there's a very genuine dedication to free speech. But you may notice that has nothing whatsoever to do with who clicked male, female, or didn't click anything on their survey form. That's not what they were there to study.
So what were they there to study?
They do a ranking of free speech on different campuses, like which campuses are the best environments for free speech. And that's what they've been doing. That's like the like sampling over time that they're doing.
Okay.
Yeah. Claremont McKenna College ended up being at the top of the ranking, by the way. Although I will say other public universities, and not just in red states, were high on their ranking as well. So like, you always want to go in and look at the source. And I want to be fair to the source. Like, I wouldn't immediately say it came from them, therefore no. But I would say that they are a advocacy and politically driven organization, right? And just like if I had like a Trevor Project statistic, Trevor Project, for those who don't know, being like a LGBTQ mental health program, I would evaluate that based on how I would give it extra scrutiny, right? Than if it was, say, the APA, right?
Mm-hmm.
In this, like, I would give it extra scrutiny because of that, because this is a clearly like rightward leaning organization, and that can influence who wants to answer their questions, right? In fact, at the very beginning of their website is like a form to sign up for their mailing list, and it asks you, and it's a required question, what your political affiliation is. So
does the mailing list form also ask what your gender is?
Right. Good question. Very good question. Okay. And does it allow you to say nothing?
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, like you want to look at the source, and again, like that doesn't invalidate the results exactly, but it really does signal you should look into the data more.
So what were they surveying that even like made them show up in this graph?
I don't actually know what the questions were on their survey.
Yeah.
I'd be interested, although it's a totally different topic, to find out how do they measure free speech on campuses? What does that mean by how do they operationalize that? And what question? But it has, and this is the point, absolutely nothing to do with what Kaufman is using this data for. And it's not totally unheard of to take a data set and use pieces of it that were not part of the research and make conclusions based on that. But if you do, you have to be very clear about that. And with surveys, that's a terrible idea because of what we said at the very beginning, which is how you word your questions makes a very big difference, right? And I do think the people who pushed back and said, well, of course, because of the stigmatizing atmosphere, that they're making a good point too, which is like he's confusing supposed correlation with causation, right? Just a fundamental mistake in a lot of research. Because this number changed, we therefore know that changing the discourse on transgender identity makes people who, quote, weren't really trans be honest about that on a survey, right? Like that is a causative assumption, again, in a study that does absolutely nothing to give you any grounds for that causative conclusion. So the people who are saying this conclusion doesn't make any sense, like is unfounded, are not wrong. But I think the problem with responding by saying, well, but you can interpret the data differently, and this is why, is without going into the data, is that then you actually validate the data as being accurate. And now all over the internet, there's this idea that there are less people identifying as trans in universities, and we don't have any evidence for that I'm aware of. And certainly these studies are not evidence for it. Right. So I just wanted to spend just a little bit of time, like kind of a short little supplemental episode to get that word out there, not just because of this specific study, but because it's a great example of what we've been suggesting that we all train ourselves to do, which is how to spot bad science in the wild. I don't know, Chris, scale of 1 to 10, 10 being the worst science in the wild and 1 being great science in the wild. How bad is this bad science?
I mean, I think it's as bad as the framing, and the framing seems completely transphobic.
Yeah. And inaccurate. It's a manipulation of the data. Yeah, I'm going to give it like an 8 out of 10 in terms of bad science, like bordering on like 9 or 10, where like for me, 9 or 10 are like actual fraud, right? This is
like actually inventing fake numbers instead of just taking numbers and saying that they mean something other than they probably mean.
Yeah, which is like 8.5. So yeah, I think this is done in bad faith. I think it is essentially a statistical lie. And I want to credit the people who have pushed back against it If you're not following Erin Reed, Erin in the Morning, you absolutely should. And I really appreciate that experts weighed in really quickly, that she reached out to the experts and reported what they said. Like, this is what we need, is to step back when we see science and get a bit of perspective on who's saying it, why, and how substantial their data actually is. So thank you for participating in my little pop quiz, Chris. I appreciate it.
You are welcome.
I'm the worst. Okay. Thanks, everybody. We're going to get back to our culture series here sometime soon. But we wanted to address this since I'm seeing it all over the place right now. All right. Any last words, Chris?
No, I'm great.
All right. I'll say bad science. It's bad for us. Bye, everybody.
You've been listening to the Psych Out podcast. For more information on today's subject, information about our charity, or to find our Patreon, check the links below. Join us next time to learn more about the psychology of who we are.
These are difficult times. We know that some of you out there are suffering so much that you might be thinking of ending your life. If you're having thoughts of suicide, please reach out to professionals for help. You can go to an emergency room, call 911, or reach out to the hotlines we have linked in this description below. I know that many of us have had bad experiences in medical settings, but there are people, many people in this field who want you to live. Please reach out for help so that you can find them. We want you around for our next talk.